The Make America Great Again, MAGA movement, anchored by Donald J. Trump's brand of charismatic, polarizing leadership, can be fruitfully conceptualized as a vast, narcissistic system, with Trump occupying the role of the grandiose, system-founding narcissist. In clinical terms, narcissism refers not merely to self-centeredness, but to a constellation of traits characterized by an inflated self-image, need for admiration, and devaluation of others. American Psychiatric Association 2013. Extending the concept from the individual to the collective, we may view the movement as an interconnected network of supporters, sub-leaders, media outlets, and cultural norms, each serving as narcissistic supply, Kernberg, 1975, whose dynamics mirror the stages of narcissistic development and pathology. Over the next several thousand words, we will undertake a deep, high-level psychological dive into how Trump's personal narcissistic pathology sets the tone, how the movement's structures perpetuate its narcissistic coherence, and how individual followers become enmeshed in a system that both reflects and amplifies Trump's narcissistic architecture. There 1. Narcissism, from individual pathology to collective phenomenon. Psychodynamic theorists such as Heinz Kohut, 1971, and Otto Kernberg, 1975, conceptualized narcissism not only as a personality disorder, but also as arising from deficits in early self-object regulation, leading to chronic needs for external validation. Narcissistic supply. While clinical narcissism manifests in individuals, group psychologists, Koenig et al. 2010, have described how movements and ideologies can take on narcissistic form. They too require constant affirmation, idealize their leader, and pathologize dissent. The operation of a collective narcissistic system involves grandiosity, belief in the group's exceptionalism and moral supremacy, idealization of the leader, perceiving the leader as omnipotent, indispensable, and uniquely capable. Feedback loop of admiration. Reinforcing messages from the leadership cadre and echo chamber media amplify group members' self-esteem and loyalty. Devaluation of others. Marginalizing critics and constructing outgroups as existential threats, or enemies. In such systems, individual members unconsciously enact parts of the leader's pathology and become complicit in perpetuating the system's grandiosity and fragility. 2. Trump as the archetypal grandiose narcissist. Donald Trump's documented traits align closely with the 5 criteria for narcissistic personality disorder, NPD. American Psychiatric Association 2013. Grandiose sense of self-importance. Frequent boasts about unrivaled success, wealth, and intellect. Preoccupation with fantasies of unlimited power and brilliance. Conspiracies about his own grandeur, e.g., I alone can fix it. Belief in being special and unique. Claiming that only certain elites or the silent majority can understand or support him. Requires excessive admiration. Constantly solicits praise, metrics, poll numbers, crowd sizes, and media coverage. Sense of entitlement. Demands deference, expects loyalty without question, ignores institutional norms. Interpersonally exploitative. Uses relationships to further his agenda, discards allies when no longer useful, e.g. repeated staff turnover. Lacks empathy. Dismisses victims of policies or critics as losers or suckers. Envious of others or believes others are envious of him. Attacks perceived rivals, accuses media of envy. Arrogant. Haughty behaviors or attitudes. Mocking detractors, celebrating success as personal proof of superiority. Clinically, such a constellation indicates deep-seated vulnerabilities. Beneath the grandiosity lies chronic insecurity, which must be defended through displays of power and contempt for perceived weakness. Kernberg, 1975, Kohut, 1971. Trump's public persona, social media usage, and repetitive affirmation seeking speak to a relentless need for external validation. 3. The narcissistic system. Organizational principles. Building on individual narcissism, a narcissistic system is organized around these core psychic processes. Systemic idealization. Followers project their ideal selves onto the leader and the movement, believing it embodies collective redemption. Projective identification. Frustrations, failures, and unacknowledged needs are externally located. The swamp, the deep state, the fake media. Mutual admiration society. Constant praise from advisors, surrogates, and sympathetic media ensures the leader never faces sustained challenge. Tabooing dissent. Criticism is reframed as betrayal. Whistleblowers are cast as existential threats or tools of the enemy. Ritualized narcissistic supply, rallies, slogans, merchandise, and social media hashtags serve as collective ceremonies reinforcing group identity. Within such a system, leader and followers co-construct an alternate reality in which the leader's perfection and the group's moral rectitude are beyond question. Challenges to this reality are met with rage, conspiracy theories, or scapegoating. Number 4. Structural components of the MAGA movement. The MAGA movement exhibits multiple interlocking subsystems that collectively sustain its narcissistic cohesion, rallies and public spectacles. Large-scale events function as mass mirroring experiences, in Kohut's terms, where each supporter sees their own esteem reflected in the crowd and in the leader's adulation. The stagecraft of rallies, light shows, chants, choreographed applause, resembles group therapy sessions in which dissent is impossible, and collective euphoria substitutes for individual self-regulation, Reichardt, 2018. Digital echo chambers platforms such as Truth Social, Parler, and MAGA-aligned Facebook groups curate homogeneous, pro-Trump content, insulating members from disconfirming evidence. Algorithmic reinforcement creates feedback loops. More engagement yields more extreme messaging, which in turn fuels further engagement, Sunstein, 2017. Alternative media ecosystem outlets like Fox News, Newsmax, and One America News provide near-constant praise for Trump, framing news to preserve his grandiosity, Miller and Engelking, 2022. Pundits and influencers operate as narcissistic supply brokers, channeling curated admiration and delegitimizing mainstream outlets as untrustworthy or biased. Political sub-leaders and surrogates. High-profile politicians and figures, e.g., Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, adopt increasingly extreme positions to demonstrate loyalty, vying for the leader's attention, akin to children competing for a narcissistic parent's affection. This creates a dynamic of splitting, where subordinates who flatter successfully are idealized, and those who stray risk swift public shaming or ostracism. Merchandising and branding. The MAGA hat, flags, clothing lines, and other paraphernalia serve as tangible extensions of self-identity, signaling membership in the grandiose collective. Consumers of these products derive narcissistic supply through symbolic association with the leader's projected greatness. Together, these components form a resilient system. Even when individual subsystems falter, others compensate, ensuring continuous reinforcement of the core narcissistic narratives. Number 5. Leader-follower dynamics, projection, idealization, devaluation. Psychoanalytic concepts elucidate the visceral bond between Trump and his base. Projection. Followers transfer personal fears, economic displacement, loss of status, cultural alienation, onto abstract enemies, immigrants, elites, cancel culture. These projections mirror Trump's own anxieties about irrelevance and betrayal, Fiffner, 2021. Idealization. Early in their affiliation, supporters often ascribe near-mythical qualities to Trump. He is infallible, fearless, uniquely capable of rescuing America. This mirrors Kohut's mirroring need, wherein the child follower expects the idealized parent, leader, to affirm their worth. Devaluation. When Trump's performance fails to meet expectations, e.g., electoral loss in 2020, legal troubles, both leader and followers devalue scapegoats, judges, the media, rival Republicans, as the source of failure. This cyclical devaluation shields Trump's grandiosity from reality testing. Over time, followers internalize this cycle. Disillusionment is rapidly redirected outward, frustration finds expression in rage toward the betrayers, and renewed loyalty to Trump emerges as the only stable psychological anchor. Number 6. Media as the narcissistic supply pipeline. Central to the system is the media environment. Selective exposure and confirmation bias. Supporters predominantly consume partisan channels that confirm their beliefs, reinforcing cognitive dissonance avoidance. Nickerson, 1998. Manufactured outrage. Daily bombshell narratives. Accusations of deep state conspiracies, weaponization of the justice system, keep the group in a heightened emotional state, ensuring constant engagement. Celebrity news logic. Trump's background as a reality TV star translates seamlessly into a politics as show business model. The media's obsession with scandals, ratings, and sensationalism functions as a perpetual supply of public adoration or indignation, both of which serve Trump's need for attention. Consequently, the media does not merely report. It co-creates the narcissistic ecosystem, facilitating the endless cycle of crisis and rescue that binds followers more tightly to Trump. Number 7, collective identity and group narcissism. Collective narcissism, distinct from healthy group pride, involves an emotional investment in an inflated image of the in-group's greatness coupled with hypersensitivity to threats. Golek de Zavala and Lantos, 2020. In the MAGA movement, collective grandiosity, the narrative that only Trump's leadership can restore America's greatness, fosters an in-group identity rooted in exceptionalism. Victimhood complex, perceiving the group as under siege by immigrants, globalists, liberals, fuels moral righteousness and justifies adversarial behaviors. Zero-sum worldview, gains for the left or non-MAGA constituencies are seen as direct losses for the group, fostering hostility rather than political compromise. This dynamic is self-reinforcing. Any criticism of the movement is perceived as a personal attack on the member's identity, triggering defensive outrage that further isolates the group and intensifies loyalty. 8. Feedback loops and pathology maintenance. Two key feedback mechanisms perpetuate the system's pathology: ritualistic repetition. Daily briefings, social media posts, Fox News segments, and talk radio circuits cycle through the same talking points, each iteration reinforcing the narrative and precluding nuanced analysis. Like a narcissistic individual repeating self-aggrandizing self-narratives, the movement's discourse serves to mollify underlying anxieties. Scapegoating and externalization, legal setbacks, e.g. indictments, electoral defeats, policy failures are never attributed to internal miscalculation, but to conspiracies or institutional bias. This preserves the leader's omnipotence in the group's eyes. Failures are attributable only to malign actors, never to the movement itself. These loops create a psychological prison, Brown, 2018, from which escape seems impossible. Admitting error implicates not only Trump, but the self-concept and belongingness of millions of adherents. Introduction. Understanding the Make America Great Again movement as a political phenomenon is one thing. Viewing it through the lens of religion reveals dimensions of belief, ritual, collective identity, and sacred narrative that secular analysis often misses. Religious studies scholars have long recognized political movements that exhibit quasi-religious structures. Durkheim's concept of civil religion, 1912, Bella's American civil religion, 1967, and Weber's notion of charismatic authority, 1922, provide foundational frameworks. By examining MAGA as a religion, we can illuminate how it mobilizes adherents, sacralizes symbols, orchestrates rituals, constructs a cosmic narrative, and enforces moral codes, all centered around the figure of Donald J. Trump as its prophetic, charismatic leader. This essay will explore 8 dimensions of religious structure within MAGA. 1. Myth and narrative. 2. Sacred symbols and icons. 3. Ritual and ceremony. 4. Moral community and boundary making. 5. Charismatic authority. 6. Sacralized space and pilgrimage. 7. Eschatology and apocalypse. And 8. Liturgy of communication. Drawing on classical theories of religion, Durkheim, 1912, Weber, 1922, Bella, 1967, Contemporary Studies of Political Religion, Lederach, 2005, Juergensmeyer, 2017, and Analyses of MAGA's Internal Dynamics, Pfiffner, 2021, Golek de Zavala and Lantos, 2020, we will demonstrate that MAGA functions as a full-fledged secular religion with all the trappings of the sacred. 1. Myth and narrative. 1 founding myth, American greatness restored. At the heart of MAGA lies a foundational myth. America was once great, fell into moral and material decline under successive administrations, and now can be redeemed through the singular leadership of Donald Trump. This resonates with Mircea Eliade's 1957 notion of mythic time, where believers re-enter an idealized golden age and seek to restore its sacred order. The invocation of the slogan, "Make America Great Again," operates as a sacred utterance, calling adherents back to an imagined moment of national perfection, an America untainted by globalization, partisan gridlock, and cultural change. 1-2 Founding Prophet, Trump as Redeemer. In religious narratives, a prophet or savior often inaugurates a new epoch. Eliad, 1957. In MAGA mythos, Trump is cast as that figure, solely capable of defeating corrupt elites, the swamp, renegotiating unfair trade deals, and reviving national pride. His biography becomes hagiography. The real estate tycoon turned reality TV star turned president, embodying self-made success and anti-establishment virtue. Every rally speech recounts episodes of persecution, e.g., witch hunts, of investigations, reinforcing the narrative of a suffering savior. Number 1, 3 Enemy Myth. The deep state and cultural enemies. No religion thrives without an antithesis. For MAGA, the deep state, fake news media, globalists, and liberal elites serve as demonic forces bent on America's destruction. This demonology structures a Manichaean cosmos: good, patriotic MAGA supporters versus evil, those who oppose Trump. Such dichotomies simplify complex political realities into cosmic battles, enhancing group cohesion. Durkheim, 1912. Number 2. Sacred symbols and icons. 1. The MAGA hat. Perhaps the most ubiquitous MAGA symbol, the red baseball cap emblazoned with the slogan, operates much like a religious scapular or medallion. Wearing it signals membership in the faithful, wards off spiritual and political danger, and provides a visual shorthand for solidarity. Anthropologists of religion note that material symbols can concentrate sacred power. Turner, 1967. Number 2. American flag and patriotic imagery. MAGA's appropriation of Old Glory transforms the U.S. flag into a totemic object, sacralized beyond mere national emblem. In rallies, flags serve as banners of holy war, marching trumpeters of identity and belonging. This parallels Durkheim's observation that collective symbols become the tangible expression of communal reverence, 1912. 2. The sangria of slogans. Beyond the hat, a constellation of phrases: drain the swamp, lock her up, stop the steal, build the wall, functions as liturgical refrains. Repetition imbues them with ritual power. Chanting these slogans enacts communal prayer, reinforcing shared beliefs and collective emotional highs. Bella, 1967. 3. Ritual and ceremony. 3-1 Rallies as religious gatherings. Trump rallies resemble revival meetings or evangelical services more than political events. They feature staging, podium as pulpit, repetitive choruses, USA, USA, collective emotional catharsis, and periodic calls to action. Are you fired up? Anthropologist Victor Turner's concept of communitas, 1969, applies here: the temporary dissolution of social hierarchies and the emergence of intense group solidarity through shared ritual. 3. 2 Pledges and oaths. MAGA supporters often pledge undying loyalty, promising to vote, volunteer, or donate. This mirrors religious commitments, baptismal vows, or pledges of service, binding individuals to the movement's moral code. The 2020 Stop the Steal oath ceremonies, where thousands of volunteers pledged to defend election integrity, concretize these commitments. 3. Digital rituals. Hashtag prayers online. Followers engage in ritualized behavior, daily posting of memes, amplifying Trump's tweets, and coordinating tweet storms. Hashtags like MAGA, Trump, 2024, and #StopTheSteal function as digital prayer beads, guiding collective attention and reinforcing doctrinal conformity. Juergensmeyer, 2017. 4. Moral community and boundary making. 4-1 In-group solidarity. Emil Durkheim, 1912, argued that religion arises from collective effervescence, a shared emotional experience that binds individuals. MAGA rallies, social media groups, and local chapters foster this effervescence, creating a moral community of real Americans who share values of patriotism, individualism, and distrust of elites. 4. 2 Outsider demonization. Religious groups define themselves often by what they are not. Geertz, 1973. In MAGA, liberals, immigrants, journalists, and establishment Republicans are cast as outsiders or heretics. This boundary making reinforces in-group adhesion, making dissent tantamount to apostasy. 4. 3 Tests of faith. Adherents face tests of loyalty, questioning Trump's statements, refusing to denounce uncomfortable episodes, or supporting controversial allies are seen as doubt. Public takedowns of figures like Jeff Sessions, who initially opposed Trump's border wall, illustrate the community's zero tolerance for perceived wavering. 5. Charismatic authority. 5. 1. Weber's charisma. Max Weber, 1922, described charismatic authority as legitimacy derived from extraordinary personal qualities. Trump's performative bravado, unfiltered rhetoric, and self-presentation as an outsider resonate with Weber's ideal type. His followers perceive him as endowed with divine gifts to lead. Weber, 1922. Number 5. Succession crisis and institutional weakness. Religions often institutionalize charisma through hierarchies or scripture. MAGA's failure to cement a durable succession plan has led to perpetual deference to Trump's personal judgment. The Republican Party's de facto transformation into Trump's ecclesia underscores the weakness of institutional frameworks absent the founding prophet. No. 5. 3. Prophetic revelations. Trump's tweets and speeches deliver revelations, claims of hidden truths, e.g., about election fraud, foreign plots. Adherents treat these utterances as divine oracles, disseminated through sympathetic media. Attempts to fact-check or contextualize are dismissed as secular attempts to suppress the sacred word. 6. Sacralized space and pilgrimage. 6. 1. Rally grounds and campaign offices. Sites like the Essex County Fairgrounds or the Phoenix Convention Center become hallowed ground during MAGA events. Pilgrims travel, sometimes across states, to worship at these venues, forging pilgrimage routes analogous to medieval Christians traveling to Jerusalem or Santiago de Compostela, Eliade, 1957. Number 6. 2. Digital sanctuaries. Websites like Truth Social, Rumble, and Parler function as digital temples, walled spaces where believers can speak freely, unimpeded by outside censorship. These platforms are curated to maintain doctrinal purity, shunning dissenting voices, much like religious sects expelling heretics. 7. Eschatology and apocalypse. 7. 1. The end times narrative. MAGA rallies frequently deploy apocalyptic rhetoric. America faces cultural genocide via cancel culture, illegal immigration, and Marxist indoctrination. This creates an urgent moral imperative. Act now or the nation perishes. Such eschatological thinking parallels religious end-time scenarios. Juergensmeyer, 2017. 7.2. Martyrdom and suffering. Figures like January 6 defendants, indicted officials, or banned social media accounts are venerated as martyrs persecuted for the faith. Their suffering becomes sanctified, and their experiences validate the narrative of victimization. Parallels emerge with religious narratives of saints enduring trials for the greater good. Number 8. Liturgy of communication. 8 sacred texts and scriptures. While the U.S. Constitution and the Bible retain cultural weight, MAGA scriptures are Trump's speeches, tweets, and official proclamations. Collections like The Art of the Deal gain near-biblical status among believers. Followers memorize catchphrases and broadcast them as dogma. 8. 2 media as ministry media figures. Sean Hannity, Steve Bannon, Tucker Carlson assume roles akin to clergy, interpreting Trump's words, providing exegesis, and guiding the flock. Podcasts and cable news shows serve as sermon broadcasts, amplifying core messages and shaping communal theology. 8. 3 confessionals and testimonies. Supporters share conversion narratives, formerly liberal or apathetic individuals saved by Trump's leadership. Such testimonies bear unmistakable resemblance to evangelical conversion stories, reinforcing the movement's appeal and exerting social proof. Number 9. Institutionalization and evolution. 9.1 From movement to party. Over time, MAGA's religious structures have formalized within the Republican Party, which now often functions as an ecclesial body. Primary elections become rites of passage, party platforms serve as catechisms, and conventions operate as grand synods. 9. 2 internal schisms and heresies. As in any religion, dissent and schism arise. Figures like Liz Cheney face denunciation as heretics. Alternative Trump-aligned candidates compete to offer purer interpretations of MAGA doctrine. These intragroup conflicts underscore the movement's vitality, but also its fragility. Number 9. 3. Potential secularization. Classical sociology of religion, Weber, 1922, predicts routinization of charisma and institutional stabilization. Whether MAGA can transform from a cult of personality into a sustainable ideological movement depends on codifying doctrine, grooming successors, and tempering apocalyptic fervor. Conclusion. Viewing MAGA as a religion elucidates aspects of its strength and resilience that secular political analysis may overlook. Through sacred slogans, ritualized gatherings, charismatic leadership, and a cosmic narrative of decline and redemption, MAGA offers adherents a coherent worldview, moral community, and existential purpose. Its symbols, hats, flags, spaces, rallies, social platforms, and eschatological urgency fuse into a secular faith that rivals traditional religions in scope and intensity. As the movement evolves, potentially institutionalizing its charisma or splintering under doctrinal disputes, understanding its religious dimensions will remain crucial for scholars, policymakers, and citizens seeking to navigate America's turbulent political landscape. Recognizing MAGA as a religion does not trivialize genuine spiritual faith, but rather highlights how human beings continually seek transcendence, community, and meaning, even through ostensibly secular ideologies. Collective effervescence, a term coined by the pioneering sociologist Emil Durkheim, refers to the intense energy and sense of unity that arises when individuals gather together around a shared object of attention, participating in rituals and emotional exchanges that transcend their ordinary selves. Durkheim observed such phenomena in traditional religious ceremonies, tribal dances, and national celebrations. But he also recognized that modern political movements can produce similarly powerful collective experiences. The Make America Great Again, MAGA movement, which coalesced around Donald J. Trump's 2016 presidential campaign and persisted through his presidency and beyond, offers a striking case study in the generation and maintenance of collective effervescence within a secular context. In examining how MAGA harnesses, amplifies, and ritualizes collective emotion, one uncovers the movement's deeper social and psychological dynamics, its mechanisms of cohesion and exclusion, and its implications for democracy, identity, and social solidarity. At its core, collective effervescence depends on several interlocking elements: the presence of a shared symbol or figure to focus attention, ritualized behaviors that align participants' actions and emotions, a sense of boundary drawing between insiders and outsiders, and the emotional feedback loops that intensify group cohesion. MAGA's central symbol is unmistakably the figure of Donald Trump himself, embodied in red baseball caps, giant inflatable balloons, banners, and the ever-present iconography of the slogan, "Make America Great Again." These tangible artifacts serve as totems around which adherents assemble. At campaign rallies, Trump takes on the role of ritual leader, delivering speech acts that repeatedly invoke themes of national decline, promised restoration, and condemnation of enemies. These speeches resemble ceremonial sermons, punctuated by call and response chants, spontaneous applause, and chanting of slogans. In Durkheimian terms, the rally is a modern-day sacred space, temporarily set apart from the profane world, wherein participants experience a dissolution of individual boundaries and a surge of collective identity. The emotional choreography of Trump rallies exhibits classic markers of collective effervescence. The lighting rigs bathe the stage in shifting colors. Towering video screens magnify Trump's gestures. Sound systems amplify every crowd roar. The surrounding structure of fences and security checkpoints demarcates insiders from outsiders. As the crowd surges in chant, "USA! USA! Build the wall!" individual spectators become indistinguishable nodes in a collective body. Feelings that might otherwise remain diffuse: anxiety about economic prospects, fear of social change, resentment of perceived elites, find direct and immediate expression. The sensory overload and rhythmic repetition create a feedback loop. Trump's emphatic declarations incite vocal responses, which in turn energize the performer, who then amplifies his gestures and rhetoric. This reciprocal dynamic closely mirrors Durkheim's description of how ritualized collective movements generate moral energy that participants carry back into everyday life. Beyond the rallies, MAGA's digital ecosystem sustains collective effervescence around the clock. Social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, function as virtual sacred precincts where adherents congregate, share memes, circulate videos of electric speech moments, and coordinate online campaigns against perceived adversaries. The hashtag MAGA operates like a liturgical chant, marking and reinforcing group membership. Online tweet storms trigger waves of reactions, further solidifying in-group identity. This digital realm allows for continuous repetition of ritualized emotional patterns, even in the absence of physical proximity. The algorithmic structures of social media intensify this phenomenon. Posts that generate high engagement are promoted, ensuring that emotionally charged content, both celebratory and outraged, dominates members' feeds. As a result, adherents experience a near constant flow of collective affirmation that underwrites their sense of belonging and significance. Understanding MAGA's collective effervescence also requires attention to its boundary work. Rituals thrive on a clear distinction between insiders, who share sacred beliefs and practices, and outsiders, whose defiance or threat invites moral condemnation. In MAGA discourse, outsiders include not only political opponents, Democrats, never-Trump conservatives, mainstream media, but also cultural others, immigrants, protesters, academics, urban elites. Trump's rhetoric frequently constructs a Manichaean universe in which we the people stand as pious defenders of national virtue against those who would desecrate it. The repeated invocation of enemies, crooked Hillary, evil fake news, the deep state, serves to reinforce group cohesion. When participants chant "lock her up" or "CNN sucks," they are engaging in ritualized expressions of collective outrage that recirculate the effervescent energy back into the group's core identity. The concept of collective effervescence also illuminates the psychological allure of MAGA for its adherents. Many supporters report feelings of excitement, empowerment, and belonging when participating in movement rituals. These emotional highs offer a respite from personal anxieties or feelings of marginalization in a rapidly changing society. The movement's promise to restore a bygone era of perceived social stability, clear moral hierarchies, and economic security resonates with individuals seeking certainty and recognition. In joining the MAGA movement, participants discover themselves as part of a potent moral community, invested with shared values and a compelling narrative of redemption. The intense emotional experiences reinforce personal identity. To wear the hat, attend the rally, or post the meme is to affirm one's self-worth as a patriotic actor in a grand historical drama. Of course, collective effervescence is a double-edged sword. While it can engender solidarity among insiders, it also amplifies groupthink, devalues critical reflection, and can lead to the demonization of outsiders. In MAGA's case, the ritualized expression of collective sentiment has at times spilled over into hostility, harassment, and even violence. Encounters with protesters outside rallies have erupted into physical clashes. Online harassment campaigns have targeted journalists and activists. The January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol stands as a grim example of collective fury unmoored from institutional constraints. In these instances, the moral energy generated through collective effervescence turns destructive, fueled by the conviction that the movement's sacred mission justifies any means. This underscores Durkheim's warning that the same forces that bind communities can also unleash destructive passions, if not tempered by institutional checks and a broader ethical framework. The MAGA movement's capacity for sustained collective effervescence also depends on the ongoing performance of charismatic authority. Max Weber characterized charisma as a form of leadership derived from perceived extraordinary qualities, capable of inspiring devotion and commitment. Donald Trump's stage persona, His bombastic oratory, his self-presentation as an outsider willing to thwart entrenched powers, and his adept manipulation of mass media embodies this charismatic dimension. Supporters project onto him a constellation of virtues: strength, honesty, patriotism, divine insight. His tweets become quasi-scriptural pronouncements. His rallies take on the character of revival meetings with Trump as the evangelist. The movement's rituals, both physical and digital, are thus anchored by his personal magnetism. The rhythmic repetition of his slogans and gestures ensures that collective effervescence remains tethered to the charismatic figure, perpetuating the cycle of admiration and emotional arousal. Traditionally, charismatic movements face a transition problem once the founding figure diminishes or departs. For MAGA, the question of what happens to collective effervescence in the post-Trump era looms large. Will the movement routinize its charisma, institutionalizing its rituals within the Republican Party or associated think tanks? Or will it fragment into competing sects, vying for the mantle of Trumpian authenticity? Early signs point to both processes at work: efforts to codify America First policies in party platforms, and the formation of organizations dedicated to educating future activists suggest an attempt at institutionalization. Simultaneously, rival leaders, whether Ron DeSantis, Marjorie Taylor Greene, or various media personalities, seek to appropriate the charismatic mantle, leading to internal competition that risks diluting the unified ritual energy. The durability of MAGA's collective effervescence will hinge on the movement's ability to maintain coherent rituals and symbols, even as its founding charismatic leader recedes from the stage. A further dimension of MAGA's collective effervescence is its interplay with broader cultural currents. The rise of populist and nationalist movements globally suggests that the emotional dynamics fueling MAGA resonate with similar patterns elsewhere. In Brazil, India, and parts of Europe, leaders have likewise harnessed collective rituals, mass rallies, patriotic pageantry, digital orchestration, to generate solidarity among followers while delegitimizing elites and outgroups. Comparative analysis reveals common threads: the use of simple but potent slogans, the elevation of the leader to near mythic status, the deployment of spectacle as a tool of emotional arousal. These parallels underscore the relevance of Durkheimian and Weberian theories for understanding 21st century politics, demonstrating that collective effervescence remains a vital force even in highly secularized societies. From a normative standpoint, the MAGA example raises pressing questions about the role of emotion in democratic life. On one hand, the invigorating effect of collective effervescence can mobilize citizens, enhance political participation, and reinforce communal bonds. Emotions, when channeled productively, can animate public debate, spur civic involvement, and foster resilience in the face of adversity. On the other hand, without institutional safeguards and a shared commitment to democratic norms, the same emotional energy can undermine pluralism, erode deliberative discourse, and precipitate social conflict. The challenge lies in discerning how to cultivate positive forms of collective effervescence, ones that unite rather than polarize, that inspire action grounded in reasoned principles rather than blind loyalty. In the American context, traditions of civic ritual, 4th of July celebrations, Memorial Day parades, presidential inaugurations, have historically functioned as sanctioned outlets for collective emotion. These rituals tend to emphasize national ideals of liberty, equality, and civic duty, balancing fervor with reflection. The emergence of MAGA rituals suggests a recalibration of collective emotion around a narrower ideological core, centered on grievances and a vision of national greatness tied to a particular identity. Moving forward, revitalizing inclusive civic rituals that accommodate diverse experiences and values could provide alternative channels for collective effervescence. Encouraging cross-cutting events, community service projects, bipartisan public forums, arts and cultural festivals can generate solidarity across ideological divides, anchoring emotional energy in shared civic commitments rather than exclusive group identities. Ultimately, the study of collective effervescence in the MAGA movement illuminates the enduring power of ritual and emotion in shaping political life. It reveals how symbols, leaders, and practices intertwine to produce potent experiences of unity and purpose. It also highlights the risks when such experiences detach from ethical constraints and democratic principles. As societies grapple with intensifying polarization and the lure of charismatic populism, understanding the mechanisms of collective effervescence becomes not merely an academic exercise, but a practical imperative. By learning from both the unifying potential and the destructive pitfalls of collective ritual dynamics, citizens, scholars, and policymakers can better navigate the emotional currents that flow beneath the surface of contemporary politics, striving to channel them toward constructive ends rather than letting them fuel division and strife. The MAGA movement, in all its fervent intensity, thus offers both a cautionary tale and a rich field of inquiry for those seeking to comprehend, and perhaps guide, the collective passions of our time. Public ritual, in its most elemental form, is the dramatic articulation of collective values through symbolic action, movement, and mise-en-scène. In the American political landscape, public ritual has long been harnessed to affirm national identity. The 4th of July parade, the presidential inauguration, the flag-raising ceremony. The Make America Great Again movement, however, represents perhaps the most concerted attempt in recent memory to marshal public ritual into a mass political engine. From the first rally in June 2015 to the post-election pilgrimages and online livestream spectacles, MAGA's public rituals have fused emotion and ideology into a potent formula for solidarity, mobilization, and identity formation. To understand the movement's power and its risks, it is essential to trace the role of public ritual in forging collective consciousness, sustaining charismatic authority, and delimiting the sacred from the profane. From the outset, MAGA's ritual calendar was both spontaneous and meticulously crafted. Early campaign rallies in towns like Mobile, Alabama, and Greenville, South Carolina, bore the hallmarks of political town halls, with Q&A sessions and policy talks, but soon evolved into fully fledged ceremonies. The opening chant, "Are you fired up? Are you ready to go?" functioned as a liturgical call to worship, catalyzing the crowd's energy into a unified roar. The USA chorus that followed operated as a rhythmic refrain across every venue, binding diverse audiences into a singular body. In that moment, individual spectators ceased being isolated citizens and became participants in a sacred assembly devoted to the redemptive task of national restoration. Core to MAGA rituals is the visual symbolism that frames the stage as a site of transcendence. Giant American flags, illuminated by spotlights, dominate the backdrop. Red, "Make America Great Again" hats rest on thousands of heads, creating a sea of uniformity that mirrors medieval pilgrimages or revivalist meetings. The stage itself, often raised above the crowd on a tarmac or arena floor, becomes an altar. Donald Trump stands at its center, alternating between preacher and monarch, delivering sermons punctuated by applause breaks and chant cues. Every rally thus operates as a paradoxical fusion of spectacle and intimacy, where the mass and the one are momentarily merged in collective effervescence. Ritual theorists such as Emil Durkheim and Victor Turner emphasize that public rituals generate a kind of collective energy that transcends everyday life and binds participants into a moral community. For MAGA, Durkheim's collective effervescence is palpable. The rhythmic chanting, synchronized gestures, and emotional crescendos create a shared euphoria that communicates more powerfully than any policy platform. Turner's notion of communitas, the liminal, boundary-dissolving solidarity experienced in ritual, emerges when Trump's supporters, often divided by region, race, class, and age, converge under the banner of MAGA, In these moments, the divisions of ordinary society are suspended, replaced by a heightened sense of belonging to an embattled national whole. Yet MAGA's public rituals also draw from the dramaturgical insights of Irving Goffman. The movement's carefully staged performances rely on the choreography of entrance and exit, the management of spectators, and the use of props. Trump's dramatic arrival, stepping off Air Force One with a salute, descending from a stagecoach-style vehicle, or walking through cheering crowds, serves as a spectacle of power that materializes his status as a leader anointed by the people. The pre-show music, the televised countdown to his appearance, the sea of flags and signs, each element is curated to prime attendees for the emotional release to come. In Goffman's terms, the front stage of MAGA rallies is tightly controlled, while backstage, locker rooms, private jets remains concealed, enhancing the aura of authenticity on display. Contrary to conventional political strategy, MAGA's rituals eschew policy wonkery in favor of the performative. Long, unscripted monologues become the central ritual act, displacing carefully vetted speeches. This improvisational style fosters a sense of unpredictability and candidness, as if the crowd is witnessing the unvarnished truth. Each rally becomes a single, massive improvisational theater, where Trump responds to audience chants, heckles, and social media trends in real time. The effect is a perpetual emergence of fresh ritual moments, unexpected nicknames for opponents, off-the-cuff policy pronouncements, comedic asides, that attendees eagerly retweet, discussing them as if they were sacred texts. The cyclical nature of ritual repetition is also critical. MAGA rallies are not one-off events, but nodes in a ritual circuit that spans election seasons and persists beyond. Each rally references past chants, slogans, and standout moments, creating an internal mythology. When Trump invokes the swamp, Crooked Hillary, or Sleepy Joe, he is not merely using nicknames, but recalling shared memories that resonate with returning attendees. The sensation of returning to an annual festival strengthens group memory and creates a self-referential community. In between rallies, movement-organized local watch parties, karaoke-style live stream simulcasts, and social media tweet hours function as micro-rituals, preserving the continuity of collective identity. Public ritual in MAGA also operates through boundary making. Victor Turner described how ritual serves to demarcate sacred from profane spaces. At MAGA events, non-believers, political opponents, credentialed journalists, undercover protesters are physically and symbolically excluded. Ticketing systems, security checkpoints, and crowd screening processes ensure that only vetted adherents enter the sanctuary. Those who breach the boundaries risk being heckled, expelled, or even physically removed. This spatial segregation reinforces the sense that the MAGA arena is holy ground where only the faithful may tread. Beyond the physical realm, the movement cultivates digital boundaries, banning dissenters from official social media groups and labeling critical media outlets as fake news. The exclusionary aspect of ritual boundary work also fosters a shared sense of embattlement. MAGA's narrative routinely presents the in-group as under attack by elites, the deep state, and cultural outsiders. This victimhood motif is ritualized in chants such as "lock her up" and "stop the steal." By vocally denouncing these enemies within the ritual space, supporters collectively vent their anxieties and fortify their group bonds. The cathartic release of shared outrage becomes a unifying mechanism, as each act of denigration reasserts the moral righteousness of the in-group and the illegitimacy of the out-group. Ritualized violence, both symbolic and sometimes physical, has appeared within MAGA's public ceremonies. Symbolic violence includes the creation of effigies, such as hanging effigies of Nancy Pelosi at local rallies, or the frequent burning or desecration of objects representing political opponents. Though explicit calls for violence are rare in public speeches, the charged atmosphere and the dehumanizing rhetoric can lower inhibitions, leading to scuffles or intimidation around rally perimeters. These episodes underscore the darker side of collective rituals. When the sacred becomes conflated with political power, the impulse to defend or avenge the group can manifest dangerously. An additional dimension of MAGA's public ritual is its integration with media. Media coverage of rallies, often packaged as breaking news, reinforces their ritual importance. Cable networks interrupt regular programming to broadcast the message of the day, while social media influencers provide live reactions, creating a synchronous media ritual that extends the event's impact far beyond the physical stadium. The feedback loop between rally and media coverage magnifies the emotional intensity. A resonant chant or memorable line becomes a viral meme, recalled in endless replays that refresh the communal experience. The media thus acts as a ritual amplifier, turning local gatherings into national phenomena. Beyond rallies, MAGA has experimented with other public rituals, including parades, caravan motorcades, and site visits to facilities symbolic of America First policies, border walls, factories, military bases. The May 2020 Make America Great Again parade, modeled after the Bastille Day celebrations in France, transformed downtown Washington into a staged celebration of Trump's first term. Military vehicles paraded past the reviewing stand, where Trump sat under a gold-fringed awning, flanked by cabinet members in formal attire. This pageantry invoked archaic notions of triumphal procession, projecting power and reinforcing the cult of personality around the president. Similarly, caravan-style motorcades, long columns of trucks, cars, and supporters waving flags, have crisscrossed key states in the lead-up to elections. These caravans serve as rolling rituals, bringing the rally experience to local communities and expanding the movement's spatial reach. Each caravan pause becomes an impromptu event. Supporters disembark to chant, speakers address onlookers, and chants for local offices blend with national slogans. In this way, the movement spatially maps its rituals onto the geography of political battlegrounds, claiming territory through performative presence. MAGA's public rituals also encompass acts of pilgrimage. After the 2020 election, thousands of supporters converged on Washington, D.C. for the January 6 gatherings. Although the ensuing violence and storming of the Capitol diverged from the scripted spectacle of earlier rallies, the event shared key ritual qualities: a focus on sacred space, the Capitol as temple of democracy, a narrative of sacrificial struggle, stop the steal, and a climactic attempt to reify political will through mass presence. The breakdown that followed revealed the fragility of ritual structures when they collide with institutional boundaries, when the sacred claims of collective will confront the profane order of law and procedure. Digital pilgrimages have complemented physical ones. Followers attracted by rally videos or live streams have traveled to affiliated sites, such as the Trump International Hotel in Washington or the Trump Ranch venues, to snap selfies, leave flowers, or reenact chants. These personal pilgrimages are ritual gestures of loyalty, creating offline expressions of online tribalism. They also testify to the enduring symbolic weight of MAGA's sacred spaces, which survive beyond the immediate political moment. Public ritual in the MAGA movement also extends to the mundane through everyday rituals: donning the red hat before work, displaying flags on one's porch, reciting slogans before breakfast. These quotidian acts ritualize identity in micro-performances that anchor political allegiance in daily life. Such habits resemble religious devotionals, morning prayers, lighting a candle, transforming political commitment into a constant companion. The stability of these micro-rituals sustains group cohesion long after the echo of rally chants fades. The educational dimension of ritual transmission is equally significant. Local chapters of Trump clubs often organize ritual training sessions for volunteers: how to lead chants, how to frame messages, how to create effective signage. These workshops instill a shared repertoire of gestures and slogans, ensuring that each public appearance, whether at school board meetings or county fairs, adheres to the movement's ritual grammar. In so doing, the movement avoids dissonance. Every local event reproduces the same recognizable choreography, reinforcing the sense of a unified national collective. Understanding the role of public ritual in MAGA also requires attention to generational dynamics. Young supporters, often socialized through digital platforms, bring their own ritual forms. TikTok challenges that rework MAGA slogans into dance routines, Snapchat filters that overlay rallies with animated hats, and Twitch streams where supporters gamify epic tweet battles. These digital native rituals intersect with physical ones, melding offline and online spaces into a fused ritual continuum. The movement's adaptability to new ritual media underscores its vitality and its appeal to emerging cohorts. public ritual under MAGA has not gone unchallenged. Counter-rituals have emerged in protest encampments, die-ins, and street theater, inviting physical and symbolic confrontation. Encampments outside rallies occupied by anti-Trump activists have staged their own rituals of resistance. People's mic readings of incarcerated migrants' testimonies, solidarity marches chanting, "No ban, no wall, no Trump at all." These counter-rituals mirror MAGA's form, processions, chants, symbolic effigies, but invert its meanings. The struggle over public ritual space thus becomes a contestation of which narratives and values will claim the attention and emotion of the broader public. The dialectics of ritual and counter-ritual highlight a broader phenomenon, the contested sacred in democratic life. In pluralistic societies, public rituals cannot be monopolized by one faction. They exist in a dynamic field of competing ceremonies. When one movement's rituals become too dominant, they risk eroding the shared civil rituals that underpin common identity. MAGA's relentless focus on its own spectacle sometimes crowds out nonpartisan ceremonies, civic holidays, bipartisan memorials, raising questions about the viability of collective rituals that transcend factional divides. The institutionalization of MAGA rituals poses both opportunities and dangers. On the one hand, formalizing certain practices, such as regular Patriot Days or civic service events, could integrate MAGA's energy into mainstream civic life, channeling enthusiasm toward broader public goods. On the other hand, rigid ritual structures risk ossification, calcifying the movement into a closed sect defined by its ceremonialism rather than its policy ambitions. The capacity to adapt rituals to changing contexts will determine whether MAGA remains a vibrant political force or devolves into ossified ritualism. In reflecting on MAGA's public rituals, it is crucial to situate them within the longer sweep of American ritual history. From Civil War monuments to New Deal WPA murals, the United States has repeatedly sought to make collective memory tangible. MAGA's rituals, like those of earlier movements, both draw on and transform these legacy forms. The red hats echo political buttons of the past. The rallies recall mid-20th century labor union gatherings. The motorcades evoke the grand parades of war mobilization. In innovating on these templates, MAGA taps into deep-seated cultural repertoires, recharging them with contemporary grievances and aspirations. The study of public ritual in MAGA thus illuminates fundamental questions about democracy and collective identity. Ritual creates bonds of loyalty and shared meaning, but it can also produce exclusion and hostility. In an age of deep polarization, the challenge is to foster rituals that unite rather than divide, ceremonies that celebrate pluralism, dialogue, and common purpose. Recognizing the power of ritual means acknowledging its ambivalence. The same mechanisms that build solidarity can also catalyze conflict. The task for civic actors, scholars, and citizens is to harness the generative potential of public ceremony while guarding against its darker possibilities. Ultimately, the MAGA movement's success in mobilizing mass participation through public ritual offers both a warning and a lesson. It warns us that when political ritual is wielded by demagogic forces, it can intensify polarization and erode democratic norms. It also teaches that ritual, rightly oriented, remains an indispensable tool for forging collective will and sustaining civic engagement. Crafting an inclusive ritual repertoire, one that accommodates diverse experiences and upholds democratic principles, may be the indispensable project of our time, ensuring that the power of collective ceremony is directed toward building, rather than breaking, the social bonds that bind us. A roiling thundercloud skirted the western rim of the Grand Canyon, casting jagged shadows across the sandstone walls as Nancy of the House Pelosi swept into the storm on her battered birch broom. Lightning danced around her like a glittering crown of serpents, illuminating the determined set of her jaw and the silver spray of wind-tossed hair at her temples. Below, the Colorado River wound itself a silvery thread through the chasm's depths. Above, the sky churned with furious magic that crackled against the night. For centuries, the canyon had been a place of wild power, where ancient spirits of wind and stone mingled. And now, as Queen Regent of the Ninth Circle of Ether, Nancy's quest had brought her here to seek the Whispering Oracle, a being of living storm and memory. Legends told that only a soul, both steadfast and compassionate, could persuade the Oracle to reveal the paths of destiny, paths that might turn the tide against the Shadow King rising in the eastern wastes. As she drew nearer to the canyon's roar, the gale threatened to wrench her broom from her grip. She leaned forward, cloak billowing like a battle-torn banner, and whispered, "By the promise of the Golden Capital and the honor of the Parliament of Hawks, I command you to bear me safe." The wind heeded her vow, bending around her in a great roaring exhalation that became a voice older than mountains. "Nancy of the Nine, why do you seek what men fear to know?" Below her, the rim trembled. The painted seals inscribed at its edge, runic wards against madness, glowed faintly. The oracle waited, not as a kindly seer swaddled in velvet robes, but as a thunder-forged entity born of storm and carved from the canyon's own bones. Nancy set her broom into a steady hover. "I come for guidance, that I might rally the fracturing houses of the free lands," she called back, voice carried on the howling gale. "The Shadow King advances with armies of twisted iron and poisoned steel. Without unity, all will fall." A bolt of lightning split the sky, revealing a vast eye of churning cloud, its iris a whirlwind of violet and silver. The voice sighed like an avalanche. "Unity is not born of chains, but of choice," it rumbled. "Must every path lead to one crown, or can many jewels share the same circlet?" Nancy felt her heart pound with both dread and exhilaration. She knew the question lay at the root of the kingdom's crisis: how to bind noble houses, proud and fractious, into a fellowship broad enough to stand against the encroaching darkness. But there was no time for reflection. The oracle's power was both great and capricious, and every second in the storm drained her strength. She raised her free hand, palm open, and recited the Creed of Asha, the ancient vow that had saved the realm in older days. "By wind and word, by oath and blood, I bind my fate to fate's own flood." The storm's fury paused. Rain hung suspended like jeweled drops in midair. In that silent instant, Nancy saw visions flicker across the lightning-lit walls. A dying star above a ruined throne, a gleaming tower besieged by black wings, fields of golden grain turning to ash. And at the heart of them all, a single choice, a path she must take, one of sacrifice and forgiveness, or one of iron rule and ruthless order. The whispers faded and the storm collapsed inward, drawing Nancy down toward a narrow ledge carved into the canyon wall. The thunderbolt eye blinked shut, and she landed with a thud that echoed like a drumbeat through the darkness. Her broom, still crackling with latent magic, settled beside her. Lanterns flickered along the ledge. Stalwart sentinels of ivory glass hung on wrought iron hooks. Their pale light revealed a carved doorway in the sandstone, its lintel inscribed with the sigils of House Redwood and the emblem of a soaring hawk clutching a quill. This was the threshold to the oracle's sanctum, where fate itself would speak. Nancy inhaled, steeling herself. Every tale she had known of the oracle ended with a price paid, a fragment of memory, a bond of blood, sometimes even a sliver of one's own soul. She adjusted her sapphire-studded brooch, remembering her promise to the Parliament of Hawks and to the people she served. There was no turning back now. She crossed the threshold. The chamber beyond was vast, hewn from living rock, but alive with shimmering motes of stormlight that flickered like fireflies trapped in crystal. At its center stood a circle of ancient basalt pillars, each carved with shifting runes that glowed with inner thunder. The wind whispered between them, carrying echoes of a million voices, laughter, tears, curses, and prayers from ages past. And there, atop a dais of black stone, stood the Whispering Oracle, a figure both formless and immense. Its shape woven from storm clouds and crackling lightning. Its voice resonated through the hall as if every gust of wind had become a word. "Nancy of the Nine," it intoned, "you enter the heart of the tempest. Speak your question that your path may be shown." Nancy drew a deep breath. She could ask for many things: victory, strength, the downfall of the Shadow King, but her heart led her to a more painful truth. "Great oracle," she said, voice echoing, "how can the houses of the free lands be bound together in trust when each fears the power of the other?" The oracle's form shimmered. "Trust is forged in the crucible of truth," it murmured, "yet truth alone will not bind. You must offer what none can refuse, a vision in which every house sees their glory magnified, not eclipsed." Nancy clenched her fist. "A vision, but how? The houses will not share power, not without sacrifice." The oracle gestured, and the runes on the pillars flared. Images bloomed on their surfaces. House Dawnmarch, reunited under a banner of red. House Steelthorn, their forges blazing against the night. House Rivermark, canals teeming with life. Then a final image, a great summit atop Eagle's Perch, where leaders stood shoulder to shoulder beneath the watchful eyes of the Parliament of Hawks. "The summit of wings," Nancy whispered. "A gathering of equals." "Yes," the oracle replied, thunder rolling in its depths. "But to call forth such a council, you must first prove your own devotion. Choose the oath you will bind yourself by, and the sacrifice you are willing to make." Nancy's mind raced. Oaths meant unbreakable bonds, but also chains. Sacrifices could be of title, of territory, perhaps even of a loved one. She recalled her daughter, Grace, far away in the verdant vale, waiting for her return. Could she risk her safety? Could she lay down her pride as Speaker Regent? As she grappled with these choices, the storm light dimmed, and the chamber grew still. The oracle's final words hung in the charged air. "Speak, Nancy of the Nine, and seal your fate." Choose your path. Oath of the free air. Vow to relinquish your claim as Regent of the Ninth Circle and swear fealty directly to the Parliament of Hawks. In return, you gain the right to summon the houses to Eagle's Perch, but must live as a wanderer until the summit convenes. Oath of the stone-bound pledge to give up the ancestral seat of House Redwood and offer its castle as the neutral ground for the summit. You cement peace, but forfeit your home and resources. Oath of the Crimson Veil. Swear to place the fate of your daughter, Grace, into the hands of the other houses as a guarantee of your loyalty. Her life binds them to the cause, but at the risk of her freedom. Sacrifice of the voice. Offer to forswear all public address. No speeches, no proclamations, your words silenced until the summit is won. You gain the moral high ground, but lose your greatest tool of leadership. Sacrifice of the blade. Leave your beloved sword, Emberstrike, upon the oracle's altar, symbolizing trust in the house's honor rather than in your martial strength. You disarm yourself, vulnerable yet principled. Dual oath of equity and mercy. Bind yourself to two pledges, to enact land reforms for the peasantry and to pardon all petty grievances between rival houses. You promise both justice and clemency, risking backlash from traditionalists. The Silent Covenant. Choose no oath, but instead accept the oracle's silent trial. Walk the canyon's deepest gorge by foot alone for 7 nights and 7 days. Survive the depths, and you earn the right to convene the summit without further sacrifice, if you return. The stormlight flickers as the oracle awaits your decision. Your choice will shape not only your fate, but the destiny of every house in the Freelands, and determine whether the Shadow King's armies will be turned aside or sweep down unopposed. Which path will you choose? Excellent. You have chosen the sacrifice of the voice, one of the most profound and perilous offerings a leader can make. Let us continue the tale. The oracle did not move, yet its presence surged forward like a wave. Nancy stepped to the center of the storm-lit circle, her boots echoing against the ancient stone. There, etched into the floor, was a sigil older than the Freelands, a broken feather circled by flame. The seal of silence. She reached to her throat and unpinned the speaker's brooch. A silver falcon with wings outspread, gifted to her when she first took the oath of voice in the Parliament of Hawks. Its presence had always been a comfort, a symbol of her right to speak not only to power, but as power. She cupped it in her hand one final time, kissed its sharp beak, and placed it gently on the sigil. A soundless thunderclap rang through the chamber. the oracle's voice no longer boomed. It now whispered directly into her mind. You understand that from this moment until the summit, your tongue is bound. You may not speak, nor write, nor send words by proxy. Your thoughts are your own, but you must lead by deed alone. Nancy nodded solemnly. A wind rose, not harsh, but encompassing, and wove a shimmering glyph of air and starlight around her throat, sealing the vow. She felt the magic settle like frost in her lungs, like velvet sewn over her vocal cords. She opened her mouth instinctively, and nothing came, not even a breath. And yet she smiled. In the parliament, in war rooms, in council chambers, she had learned to sway hearts with a sentence, to quell dissent with a glance paired with the right word. But now, her silence would speak louder than any proclamation. She would be a living vow, a walking sacrifice, a whisperless rebuke to those who only sought power for power's sake. The oracle's form began to fade, its energy ebbing like tidewater. Your silence is a blade. Wield it well, or it shall wound only you. A great gust swept her back through the sanctum's carved arch. Her broom rose to greet her, its bristles glimmering faintly with renewed strength. She mounted it and soared once more into the roiling sky, now shot through with calmer streaks of moonlight. As she flew, ravens, messengers of the old gods, circled her, bearing witness. From below, she saw riders emerge from canyon paths, scholars from the Vale, monks of the Order of the Chime. Word would spread, the speaker regent had chosen silence. In a world addicted to noise, the absence of voice would ring like a bell. And yet, new perils awaited. The nobles of House Steelthorn and House Goldhewn would interpret her silence as weakness. Spies would question whether she had been cursed or broken. And the Shadow King, he would know. He would feel the shift in the winds of fate and move swiftly to exploit it. But Nancy was already far beyond his reach. She was no longer merely a woman or a leader. She had become a symbol. The path ahead branched in 1,000 directions. The summit of wings was no longer a dream. It was a storm gathering at the edge of destiny. Shall we continue the journey? If so, choose the next step Nancy must take on her voiceless campaign. 1. Journey to House Steelthorn. The most militant of the great houses, they despise weakness. Nancy must convince them through a feat of physical prowess or daring leadership. 2. Visit the Verdant Vale, where her daughter Grace waits. Perhaps a message can be shared through unspoken gesture and sacrifice. 3. Summon the Chime Monks. Seek their ancient rite of silent accord to build a language of gesture among allies. 4. Infiltrate the Eastern Wastes. Spy firsthand on the movements of the Shadow King, risking everything without a single word. 5. Return to the Parliament of Hawks. Let them witness her vow and vote on whether her silence is strength or disqualification. 6. Convene the Broken Banners. Forgotten houses with grudges. Sway them with action, not words. 7. Seek the Library of Dust, an ancient place of forgotten power. Perhaps within its silent halls lies a relic that can amplify deeds without voice. Which path shall she tread? The Grand Canyon roared below as wind rushed past Nancy's cloak. She flew not north toward the fortified bastions of Steelthorn, nor west to the scriptoriums of the Vale, but instead banked south toward the Hollow of Bells. Few traveled there willingly. The Chime Monks were ancient, secretive, cloistered deep in a series of sun-drenched cliffs where time had worn the rock into cathedral-like vaults. It was said that before the written word, before even the spoken tongue of the old kings, there had been gesture, rhythm, and breath, and that the Chime Monks were its last practitioners. Only those who had truly forsworn voice could seek the right of silent accord. To speak, even once, was to lose the path forever. She would not speak. Nancy guided her broom in a gentle spiral down into the cavernous terrain. The landscape changed subtly as she descended. Cacti gave way to flowering blue mosses and pale lichen that shimmered in the heat. Strange birds, white and black like yin and yang, watched her with serene eyes. The air grew unnaturally still. Then she heard it. Not music, not words, but a tone. Clear, singular, long as breath itself. It pulsed in her bones. It wasn't sound so much as memory, an echo of something human and pre-human, something remembered by blood and marrow. They had noticed her. She landed before a great stone gate carved not with symbols or glyphs, but with smooth, circular depressions, as if chimes had been pressed into the walls and then removed. Before she could knock, the door opened. A figure in robes the color of unlit candles stood in the archway, hood drawn, face masked in hammered silver. The figure bowed, not deeply, not lowly, but with a deliberate arc that signaled both welcome and caution. Nancy bowed back. The monk gestured with 3 fingers. Follow. Speak not. Break rhythm and the path closes. And so began the rite. The path wound through narrow corridors filled with quiet music. Not played, breathed. Whistling stone vents and wind-tuned wires created an ever-shifting melody that responded to each footstep. It was not merely a test of patience or silence, but of harmony. To walk the path was to become part of the music. She had once spoken for empires. Now she treaded as a note in someone else's composition. Hours, or maybe days passed. She ate bread soaked in silence tea. She meditated beside blind monks who communicated entire stories with hand tremors and blinking eyes. She watched a novice reprimanded for sighing too loudly and vanish into the dust hall, never to be seen again. Finally, on the 7th cycle of the moon's gleam on the canyon floor, she was brought before the circle of 10,000 breaths, a hollow chamber carved in perfect symmetry, ringed with chimes made from crystal, bone, and stone. The Grand Bell monk awaited her there, robed in basalt black, a chain of silent stones around his neck. He studied her, not with suspicion, but with something more demanding, expectation. He held up both hands and began a dance of fingers and palms. Nancy watched, heart racing. The signs were archaic, yes, but beneath the surface she recognized roots of language. A plea, a greeting, a question, a challenge. She lifted her hands and responded. A swirl of gesture, tentative at first, then more precise. A bowed wrist to indicate allegiance. A clasp of thumb to palm to say, I have come not for power, but to serve the accord. The bell monk stepped forward. From his cloak, he drew a scroll, not of paper, but of stretched thread. As he unfurled it in the air, it shimmered with embedded gestures. The lexicon of silent accord. And Nancy began to learn, not merely how to sign, but how to channel. Motion into meaning, silence into thunder. A bowed head could mean sorrow in one rhythm and vow in another. A flicked finger could say attack or forgive, depending on the sequence. Every gesture was a phrase. Every breath, a footnote. She trained with warrior monks who wielded blades with their offhands while communicating tactical orders with their other. She meditated with diplomats who could end a war through a 2-hour dance of fingers. She learned to speak in silence. And when she was ready, the bell monk took her to the heart chamber. There, she knelt before a great freestanding bell. It was carved not of metal, but of petrified songwood from the Age of Whispers. She placed both hands on it, and it pulsed in response to her silence. It accepted her. Her initiation complete, she was granted the sigil of accord, a simple tattoo etched in pale ink across her left wrist, a spiral within a square flanked by 2 empty circles. She would now be understood by those who honored silence as sacred. She was ready to lead again. But outside the Hollow of Bells, the world had not been idle. The Shadow King had unleashed his spectral heralds upon the free cities. The Parliament of Hawks had splintered, with half declaring her silence a betrayal. House Steelthorn had allied with House Dustborn. Even her old rival, Senator Grack of the Rust Coast, had emerged with a speaking relic known as the Vox Engine, using it to sway the restless masses. War brewed, not of swords and sieges, but of meanings, of narratives, of voices. And Nancy, armed now with a language that needed no sound, would face them all. Choose her next step on the path of the voiceless regent. Challenge the Vox Engine. Confront Grack in the arena of echoes. where only one form of communication may prevail. Return to Parliament. With the sigil of accord, attempt to rebuild fractured alliances and assert silent leadership. Lead the Chime monks into battle. Convert her new allies into a secret order of gesture-bound warriors. Rescue the scholar of forgotten names, a master of sigil lore imprisoned in the citadel of blades. Convene the Circle of the Voiceless, a hidden council of leaders who have also given up speech for power. Breach the citadel of the spectral heralds. Use gesture magic to disable the Shadow King's seers. Speak once, break the vow prematurely to warn the world of a hidden truth. Risk. You have chosen, lead the Chime monks into battle. Convert her new allies into a secret order of gesture-bound warriors. The world had known many armies, those of iron and fire, those of gold and law, those of shadow and faith. But never before had it seen what Nancy Pelosi was about to forge, a battalion not of booming voices or heraldic banners, but of silence carved into motion, discipline owned in stillness. They would speak not in war cries, but in rhythm. They would strike as breath, vanish as mist, endure as stone, and they would be called the Accorded. Nancy stood beneath the sky arch, the highest precipice of the Hollow of Bells. Below, the Chime monks gathered by the thousands, novices in bone-colored robes, elders marked by wind-scorched cloaks, the obsidian quiet blades from the perimeter watchtowers, and the whispering flutists whose silent pipes directed wind itself. All watched her. She raised her arms, left hand to the heart, right to the brow, and bent her knee in the pattern of allegiance. A monk near her, young but with eyes aged by knowledge, mirrored the movement. Then another, and another. The rite of concord was accepted. In the weeks that followed, the monks who once eschewed war were transformed into conductors of battle, not with screams or war horns, but with complex, precise movement. They trained in cordessa, the martial silence, a language of hand signals, foot taps, and rhythmic pulses. Each warrior became a verse. Squads became stanzas. Legions became epics. Nancy trained alongside them, no longer an outsider, no longer simply a leader by title, but a practitioner of the very art she had adopted. She learned to fight with one hand while guiding an entire platoon's formation with a flick of her fingers and the blink of an eye. They didn't march. They flowed. The world was not ready. One moonless night, a message arrived at the Hollow's outer gate, carried on the back of a dust-weary desert fox. The throne of Steelthorn had fallen. A coup staged by the Dustborn Alliance. The Iron Prince now ruled the lowlands and had outlawed all sign rituals. The Parliament of Hawks had collapsed. The only safe zones left were the floating libraries of the Lexomancers and the cloud-wrapped isles of the Silent Sisters. Chaos spread. Nancy called her council of tacticians, master monks, scholars of rhythm warfare, and 2 disgraced generals who had taken the vow of silence in exile. She lit a single candle, the oath flame, and drew 3 concentric circles around it in chalk. A ritual unspoken, yet universally known. It was time. The campaign began at dusk. 3 legions of accorded warriors moved through the canyons, unseen by scouts and unheard by sentries. Their armor was layered in hollow chime plate, metal that deflected sound instead of echoing it. At dawn, they stood at the walls of Ironhold and signed only one word: awaken. Then they struck. The battle that followed would one day be called the Quiet Storm. Soldiers trained to respond to bugles and shouted orders found themselves paralyzed in confusion. The accorded fought in synchrony, formations shifting like migrating birds, each warrior a syllable in a larger, perfect syntax. Arrows missed, orders failed, morale shattered. Nancy, leading from the ridge above the fortress, directed the battle with only her hands and a ceremonial fan made from the feathers of windshifters. Her signals were subtle but decisive. One motion led to the capture of the southern gate, another to the disabling of the Vox Tower. By nightfall, the fortress fell, taken without a single war horn, without a single boast. But Nancy didn't stop. She moved from stronghold to stronghold, freeing old allies, absorbing guerrilla cells into her silent command. The accorded grew. Their ranks now included former senators, fugitive librarians, even a disgraced bard who had burned his own voice in penance to join the cause. News spread, not through papers or proclamations, but in hushes and handshakes. In the city of Cradleglass, children played games in accord signs. In the markets of the Rust Coast, traders bartered using gestures learned from fugitives. In the deepest cells of Steelthorn, rebels etched signal paint onto walls with stolen soot and blood. A movement had become a language had become a legion. And yet the silence had grown loud. The Shadow King, watching from the Dream Citadel, sent forth his orators, black-tongued conjurers who could warp thought with speech. In the north, a rebel battalion of Akagas, accorded, was torn apart when a single orator sowed dissent with only a 12-word curse. The spectral heralds had begun rewriting history with memory signals, claiming Nancy was never real, that the Accord was a trick of wind. To fight this enemy, Nancy would need more than warriors. She would need witnesses. And so she embarked on her most dangerous mission yet, to recover the Tome of Breath, a living archive held within the deepest crypt of the floating libraries. A book that could not be read, only felt, and that contained the entire pre-verbal history of the world. With it, she could prove the legitimacy of the Accord, spread its truth beyond gestures and into dreams. But it was guarded by the Choir of Dust, a faction of ex-monks who had betrayed the Chime Order centuries ago and now whispered commands through the bones of fallen gods. Her army could not reach the library without triggering a cataclysm. She would need to go alone. Or would she? You decide. The next chapter of Nancy Pelosi, the Voiceless Regent. 1. Infiltrate the floating library alone, a one-woman mission of silence and shadow to recover the tome without alerting the Choir of Dust. 2. Send her most loyal lieutenant, the Quiet Blade. Trust her protege to retrieve the tome while she defends the Accord's gains. 3. Stage a phantom siege. Create a false attack to distract the choir while a secret team retrieves the tome. 4. Parley with the Choir of Dust. Attempt a risky truce using gesture diplomacy with those who abandon silence for whispers. 5. Use forbidden rhythms. Deploy a dangerous battle dance outlawed by the Chime Order that can bend time around her troops. 6. Seek the counsel of the Silent Sisters. Ask the mysterious Sky Dwellers to intervene and grant divine silence to protect her mission. 7. Unleash the Bell of Reversal. Ring a chime so ancient it may undo not only speech, but memory itself. Your next choice guides the fate of the tome, the Accord, and the future of language in a world unraveling. The Bell of Reversal was older than the concept of voice. It was not cast but grown, a lattice of time-hardened resonance wood harvested from the extinct Aeon trees at the root of the world. Its tones did not reverberate through air but through the psyche, crawling through the bones of reality itself, cracking the seal on moments long buried and erasing others as if they had never been born. It had not been rung since the first Accord, when the gods themselves had argued over the invention of speech, and lost. Nancy Pelosi, voiceless regent of the Accorded, stood before the bell. She wore no armor, no robe, only the ritual chalk lines drawn by the 7 elder monks across her skin in the geometry of consent. Her mouth was sealed with a vow thread. Her heart beat in rhythm with the threefold pattern of yielding. Only the one who had renounced both past and future could ring the bell. It loomed above her, massive, seamless, the color of old silence. Its clapper was shaped like a spine, its frame like the inside of a skull. Around it, the chime monks knelt in a wide circle, performing the gesture of unburdening, each surrendering a cherished memory to the air, letting it flutter up like paper into the void. Nancy placed her hand on the spine clapper and paused. She remembered her granddaughter's laugh. She remembered her first debate. She remembered the moment she decided never to speak again, when the parliament fell and the world cracked like porcelain. All of it was about to vanish, because what the Accord needed was not just a victory, it needed an origin myth. She pulled. The sound didn't ring, it unfolded, a silent thunder that bloomed outward, bending the air, wrinkling time. The first to feel it were the monks. Their eyes rolled back, their gestures slowed, then stopped. The circle of accord, carved in the ground, shimmered and then reversed. Memories streamed backward. The fall of Steelthorn unhappened. The quiet storm rewound into disarray. The fortress unfell. The dream of the accord reversed into murmur, into breath, into idea, then vanished. Even the enemy forgot their crimes. The orators woke up dazed, their tongues twisted, no longer able to weave war with syllables. The spectral heralds wept, unsure why they held burning scrolls in their hands. And Nancy? She stood alone in the canyon now. The bell was gone. Her name was gone. She looked at her hands, clean, unmarred by war, unburdened by command. She looked at the sky. Brilliant, unscarred by the banners of empire or rebellion. She saw a world before voice, before vow, before faction. It was hers to shape again. But there was one last twist. The bell had not only erased memory, it had stored it. And someone, someday, would remember.
Upon the wind-skirt edge where canyon shadows gleam, a voiceless queen stands bound in ancient rune and prayer. Her clasped hands weave the silent lexicon of dream, each gesture a vow echoing on the midnight air. No trumpet dares proclaim her name, no herald's cry disturbs the hush she bore to fortify her will. Her breath becomes a chime that trembles in the sky, a wordless song that bends both time and memory still. The chime monks robed in moonlight's pale, unwavering grace converge in patient circles, bone-fetched bells in hand. They tumble every fragment of the past from its place, releasing histories that drift like dust across
In the modern era, attention is no longer just a fleeting cognitive process. It is the axis upon which entire economies turn, where power consolidates and where ideologies are manufactured, marketed, and maintained. To understand attention is to understand the deepest levers of influence, to see beneath the surface of political slogans, entertainment trends, and even personal identity. Attention is the true battlefield of the 21st century, and most people, tragically, are unaware they've already been conscripted. They do not realize they are not the commanders of their mental battalions, but rather foot soldiers in conflicts orchestrated by those who understand attention intimately. At its root, attention is a biological function, the filtering mechanism through which we decide what to process and what to ignore. This filtering was once a matter of survival. Our ancestors needed to focus on the rustle in the grass, the movement in the trees, the tone in a stranger's voice. Attention was honed for safety, for food, for tribe. But now, in a world where we're bombarded by more stimuli in a day than our ancestors encountered in a lifetime, that same attentional mechanism becomes both vulnerable and exploitable. The very thing that kept us alive is now being used to pacify, distract, and redirect us. The attention economy, as it is now aptly called, functions not merely on the basis of interest, but of compulsion. The most successful platforms do not just capture attention, they engineer dependency. Infinite scrolls, autoplay features, variable reward systems, algorithmic curation, all of these are designed not just to please the user, but to keep the user, to make return visits habitual, to shape neural pathways, to addict. And this addiction is not metaphorical. MRI studies reveal that the same dopamine-driven feedback loops exploited by slot machines are activated by social media usage. Every like, share, notification ding is a neurological lure, baiting the user into deeper entrenchment. This system flourishes because most people believe they are in control. They think, I'm just checking Instagram, or I'll watch one YouTube video, without realizing that their behavioral loop has already been pre-programmed. These aren't innocent digital strolls. They are journeys laid out by unseen hands. When Netflix asks, "Are you still watching?" it is not expressing concern for your health or well-being. It is expressing disbelief that you haven't already sunk another 3 hours into a carefully crafted funnel of endless narrative reward. But the problem is deeper than addiction. What's at stake is not merely time, but identity. Who we are is in part a result of what we pay attention to. Our memories, our preferences, our opinions, all are constructed atop the raw data we consume. If your attention is being directed without your awareness, then your self is being shaped without your consent. In such a world, attention theft becomes soul theft. This is why politics has become theater, why outrage is currency, why extremism thrives. Political operatives, media corporations, and influencers all understand that anger keeps people watching. Fear keeps people engaged. Simplicity keeps people from turning away. Nuance doesn't trend. Moderation doesn't go viral. The result is a feedback loop in which the most inflammatory content garners the most attention, which in turn justifies its continued production and proliferation. And this is not accidental. There are entire consulting firms and algorithmic teams devoted to optimizing emotional resonance for maximum engagement. They know which words to use, which phrases to avoid, which images elicit anger, empathy, or tribal allegiance. They test, iterate, and refine the machinery of manipulation. And when you scroll past their content, you are not evading it. You are still engaging. Even avoidance is data. Consider the metaphor of the magician. A magician does not merely perform tricks, he performs misdirection. He gets you to look where he wants you to look, so you miss the sleight of hand. Modern attention manipulators are magicians of a far more insidious sort. They make you look at the scandal, the drama, the celebrity feud, while behind the curtain, policies are changed, rights eroded, contracts signed. They generate headlines like decoys, and the public consumes them as though they are substance. In such a landscape, silence becomes resistance. The ability to sit quietly with one's thoughts, to read a difficult book, to resist the twitch for a screen, is itself a revolutionary act. The monks of the past practiced solitude to know God. Now, we must practice solitude to remember ourselves. Attention is the mirror in which we see the shape of our soul, and when that mirror is fractured by constant distraction, we no longer recognize who we are becoming. The tragedy is that this is not a technological inevitability. Technology is not the villain, it is the architecture. The question is, who designs the building? Who controls the flow of movement within it? We are not living in a digital democracy. We are wandering through privately owned empires with unseen walls and unmarked exits. The terms of our participation are dictated not by consensus, but by code. We do not vote on what goes viral. We do not deliberate what appears on the homepage. We are fed. And like livestock, most of us are unaware we are being fattened. Not for slaughter, but for sale. Our attention is sold to advertisers, to campaign strategists, to behavioral researchers. We are metrics. We are engagement points. We are conversion probabilities. And the deeper this system embeds itself into our daily rhythms, the more difficult it becomes to imagine an alternative. Convenience seduces. Ease anesthetizes. The frictionless life is a life without resistance, and therefore without awareness. But awareness is the beginning of power. To become aware of where your attention goes is to reclaim your agency. To choose a long walk over a short reel. To read a complex essay rather than skim a meme. To converse instead of comment. These are not merely aesthetic choices. They are acts of sovereignty. The most radical thing you can do is to guard your attention like a jealous deity. To build rituals of stillness. To fortify your time with intention. To audit the inputs of your daily consciousness like a vigilant gatekeeper. Because the future will not be written by the most brilliant or the most moral, but by those who understand attention best and wield it most ruthlessly. The architects of tomorrow are not orators or generals. They are designers of platforms, engineers of engagement, authors of algorithmic pathways. Their war is bloodless but total. Their weapons are frictionless but lethal. Their battlefields are not oceans or deserts, but timelines, news feeds, and notification streams. And if you are not aware of this, you are already a casualty. So begin now. Choose to reclaim your gaze. Cultivate boredom, for it leads to reflection. Resist convenience, for it breeds compliance. Refuse the scroll, for it feeds the machine. Withdraw your attention like a protest, like a strike, like a sacred right. The most important revolution of this century will not be fought with weapons, but with awareness. And the most important territory to liberate is the space between your ears. The choice is not whether you will be influenced. The choice is whether you will know by whom. And that, perhaps, is the only power that still remains truly yours.
Whisper softly, You're wandering here in the dark rain, where shadows creep. You whisper fears underneath your breath. It's golden deep in this empty space, where echoes chase, fingers tracing lines of a heart that's lost, searching for a sign in the heavy frost. You wear a mask of strength and pain, careful not to show what's driving you insane. You're walking slow in the pouring night. The world feels slow, but you search for light. With every step, your spirit fades like fading dreams in the midnight haze. Feel the city pulse, it sings your tune, but you walk alone underneath the moon. Haunted memories whisper in the dark, like ghosts of what once lit a spark. You chase the silence with every breath. The weight of longing feels like a theft.